you can just push that thing in front to zoom in, and it's going to focus on whatever's in the little rectangle. It's got autofocus. You see a little rectangle?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're in focus.
Good.
And you're up real close.
All right. Oh! If you want to go wide, and then I'll climb up.
Okay.
Out of the picture or something.
Go ahead.
Come down. Yeah, it's there. What do I have, about 30 feet to the dirt?
This is a new poem. It's called Reinhabitation. The wild is re-inhabiting. The wolf's not waiting anymore. The cougar's coming. Hopefully the ivory bill's cry will be heard soon, its stammer in the deep woods after it migrates from Cuba. And the panther, the alligator, both coming to close Alligator Alley forever. They aren't patient, those ones. They refuse to wait forever, just as Bear refuses. Old Blackie's making a comeback in California. Maybe his cousin Grizz will get the message. Re-inhabit, take back his territory, what he owned before we stole it from him. The soundtrack of the wild isn't just playing on your tape deck anymore. The tape's off. Didn't you hear it stop? Those are real wolf howls coming through your door. Here's a poem I did around a couple campfires here. It's called Things with Genes. Things with chromosomes and genes terrorizing our machines. It's an outrage, it's unfair. Condor, squirrel, grizzly bear. Used to be machines could dance. Now there's all these dadgum plants. I had a bulldozer for my squeeze. Now there's all these dadgum trees. Machines aren't just metallic parts, they have engines for their hearts. Hearts that sometimes are surprised, hearts that can be terrorized. Yellow dozer lies asleep, dreaming dreams that make it weep. Tears of oil run down its frame. Things with genes they are to blame. Things with chromosomes and genes terrorizing our machines. It's an outrage, it's unfair. Red wolf, owl, grizzly bear.
Hi there. Thanks for checking in. I appreciate it. I'm Andy Caffrey, and this is Getting Real About Reality. I have quite a variety of things for you today. I hope you'll enjoy this. I want to contribute to your toolkit of activism by showing you some real world history from our culture and from beyond. I've been very much experienced by many, many people, and I've been involved in a lot of projects, media projects, where I put on events. An event center in Berkeley called Shared Vision. A lot of environmental people, indigenous people, and people from all kinds of spiritual traditions and all kinds of modern sciences, neurology. People like John Lilly, who invented the isolation tank. And he also was one of the first people to try to learn to communicate with dolphins. And he was a guest lecturer at 2 or 3 classes I had while a student at UC San Diego in the 70s. And a friend of mine actually started an isolation tank business. His name is Don Serlin. And so I actually got to spend a lot of time exploring isolation tanks. So I want to share with you many of the same people who influenced me, because I'd much rather show you what's going on to help you make decisions about what you're going to do with your time and your resources, the kind of people you're going to work with, and how you're going to talk about things, what you're going to demand, or even if you are going to demand. Maybe you're just going to send up smoke signals or send an email to somebody. Well, I think we have to do more. And a lot of the people that you're going to see in these videos and people I'm going to talk to in future chats, and I'm sure a lot of you who will be responding in the comments, and later on I'll be having Skype so you can actually call in and comment just like talk radio. So we're going to have a conversation here, ongoing, responding to what's going on in reality. I'm in recovery from MSNBC. We spend our time wherever we put our attention, and I have found much more important things for me to put my attention into than what's coming through commercial media. A bunch of millionaires talking to me is not really helping. I've tried. I watch a lot of it, and I still watch a lot of it. But I'm interested in what people who sink whaling ships have to say. And so, in this program, I'm going to show you a video I shot of Captain Paul Watson in 1990. As I mentioned in my first episode, Captain Watson helped me out when I was starting the campaign against the first test releases of genetically engineered microbes into the environment. He gave me an opening spot in his show, so I could talk for about 5 minutes about what was going on, and out of that came the team that eventually shut down GMO bacteria globally and have helped all kinds of groups around the world do direct actions that changed laws that either banned GMOs outright or required labeling. So the reason I am taking the time to present this to you is I'm interested in activism that makes a difference. And the people I'm presenting to you, the musicians and poets, the direct action activists, the intellectuals, and organizers from all kinds of movements, particularly third-party movements. I helped start 2 green parties in the U.S. and got to work with a couple of the most important people of the German Green Party movement, Petra Kelly and my big inspiration, a guy named Rudolf Barrow. So, we opened the show with me climbing in a redwood tree. I think that was the first time. I was trained by Greg King, who was the discoverer of Headwaters Forest. And Headwaters Forest was very much like the forest you saw there. Rockefeller Grove is about 25 miles from my home in Humboldt County. And it's still, to this day, my favorite place on the planet. And so I'm kind of a guardian of that place. And so Greg was training some of us how to rig a 2,000-year-old tree, maybe 11 feet across, by climbing almost 200 feet up into it. And so Greg got a hold of the camera while I was climbing up to capture some of that. That was pretty fun. But that's it's actually a forest, a rainforest, a temperate rainforest, that's got 4 times more biodiversity and biomass than, not biodiversity, biomass, than tropical rainforest. So a lot of the activism I got into with tropical rainforest work really spurred me to work to develop, to get involved in campaigns to save all of the forests on the west coast of North America. And so the other thing I'm going to show you in this program, the thing coming up next, is John Seed, the founder of the World Rainforest Movement, my Australian friend and total inspiration for me, a man I toured with as a videographer. He was being interviewed by Robert Hunter, who was a friend of Paul Watson's, and helped him start Greenpeace, and I think pretty much departed, or maybe he came later than Paul, but met up again in the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. So these are people who do really bold things. They are willing to break laws. In our Frostpan campaign, we were willing to bankrupt a company we took out, Advanced Genetic Sciences. So I want you to feel like it's okay to take out some of these horrible companies. And by that I mean, disempower them. I'm a total nonviolent activist. I don't believe there's any violent strategy that is going to contribute to what we want to accomplish. And it just creates more fear. And we need to pull people together into small communities that become larger communities that are taking care of what has to be taken care of. So that's what my activism interests are. And I'm going to play some more footage from that time. I assembled a number of these clips into something called Welcome to the Rendezvous, because they're mostly performances from the Earth First gatherings called Round River Rendezvous, and we have a concert at the end, and so I started filming those concerts. So you're going to see Dakota Sid and Walking Jim Stoltz later, but now I think we will go over, and this is a Canadian news clip. Robert Hunter was now the environmental reporter for this Canadian TV station. And so he got to do this really cool interview with John Seed in June 1989. And about a month later, I would join John on his road show to spread the word about tropical rainforest destruction. So that's what Hunter's talking to him about. And John had a slideshow, and he'd sing songs and give a rave about what was going on and organize rainforest action groups that were connected up with the Rainforest Action Network, which had come out of Earth First. And so we launched national, international campaigns with a bunch of totally decentralized, very anarchistic in a lot of places, grassroots, radical activists. So here you go. This is it's interesting little commentaries by some Canadians at the beginning. But you can tell that the gears were changing in these Canadian news guys' heads, especially at the end. It's really, really cool. So here we go.
Yes, I give to the environment movement because I think it's very important that we're concerned about the air we breathe, the water we drink, and our life, and on this planet.
Yes, I give to the environment movement. I think it's important for all of us to support a good cause like this.
Personally, I don't give financial support to the environment movement. I think the majority of funds should come from the government.
Yes, I do give to the environment movement because over the past 20 years, man's pollution has gotten out of control. And I feel it's about time we start giving back to try and clean it up.
On Close-Up tonight, grim predictions about the future of the planet. According to Australian writer and rainforest activist John Seed, we may have only 10 to 15 years to change our ways before the ecological destruction of the Earth becomes irreversible. Our ecology specialist Bob Hunter spoke with the ecological radical leader during a visit here to Toronto.
What happens if you peel enough bark off of a tree? You don't get a tree without bark, you get a dead tree. What we're doing with our trees around the world, especially the rainforests, is literally peeling the bark away from the planet itself and killing it. The critical challenge in our time is to find a way to stop destroying the planet long enough for a wiser generation to come along and pick up the pieces. John Seed is a man who has devoted his life to fending off that destruction, at one point having himself buried up to his neck in the path of a bulldozer to save a forest in Australia.
This isn't a question of scenery. This isn't a question of wilderness experience for a few people. This is a matter of life and death.
These forests are part of the life support systems. They're a vital organ on this living planet Earth. And that to destroy those forests is to destroy any future that we might have. At the moment, the big campaign is to stop the consumption of rainforest timbers, the mahogany, the teak, the rosewood, the ebony and the other timbers which are laying the rainforests of the world to waste. And huge quantities of these timbers end up in North America, many of them via Japan, and basically less than a single human lifetime remains before these rainforests are utterly annihilated, mainly for timber, also for beef. A lot of the Central American and South American rainforests have been cleared, and even as we speak are being cleared for beef. This is the big problem in Brazil at the moment, where 120,000 square miles of the Amazon burnt last year, all of it deliberately lit fires fueled by subsidies for the cattle industry. In the United States, 90% of the corn, the maize and the oats that are grown are fed to cattle, and that the amount of water involved, the amount of energy involved is such that, for instance, half of all of the water used for any purpose in the United States is used to grow beef. You know, so that it's a tremendous drain on the aquifers, a tremendous drain on the rivers, huge amounts of power go into the fertilizers to grow these crops, and it seems as though perhaps the single most important thing a person in the United States could do to save the rainforests and also their domestic forests is to stop eating beef. I think that we're going to discover, looking back in a year or two, that this period now was really pivotal as far as a dramatic change in consciousness and a dramatic change in what people are prepared to accept as acceptable behaviour. They're not going to say, yes, you can save the planet, but only as long as you restrict yourself to hanging banners and doing publicity stunts. It's time to start throwing tea overboard. It's time people started uprising and doing something about this, and I think everyone's really ready to hear this now. It's not as though we're going to disappear in 10 years, but 10 years from now, that downward spiral is going to be so accelerated that it's hard to see any technology that's going to be able to pull us out of it. So we're the last human generation that's going to be in a position to do anything about this.
Definitely alarming to hear less than a single lifetime before the destruction becomes irreversible. Mm-hmm. Another interesting point you told me earlier, you asked him, Mr. Seed, how he got involved in the environment movement. What did he tell you?
Well, actually, he'd read my book years ago about back when the whaling issue was happening, and also was very inspired by some of the stuff some of the activists were doing, trying to intercept radioactive waste being dumped into the ocean. Yeah. So there's a kind of an interesting feedback loop.
Yeah, and his comment about it's time for a tea party, referring to the Boston Tea Party, and you told me earlier about some pretty radical things going on in the rainforest.
Well, the Earth First organization is well known in the United States, just starting to be so here. They're the people that advocate spiking trees, pouring sugar into the machinery to stop things. And in other words, they're saying we have 10 years to turn this around, and if we continue with business as usual and you all go ahead and do what you've been doing all along, we don't have a hope in hell. Now, one of the things they actually recommend, I don't know if it's a serious recommendation, but the idea that we would have a rite of passage for young men would be at the point where you killed your first bulldozer.
Interesting. Smacks of the 60s, doesn't it? That kind of radical...
Well, but, in terms of the ecology issue, actually the 90s is shaping up as the big 60s. Like all that consciousness was there in the 60s. Yeah. And it kind of petered out in this, or it got going in the 70s, but the 80s, as everybody knows, was the me decade of utter consumption.
Well, we all know now we have to do something, and fast.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
One of the important things about deep ecology and about the Council of All Beings, that apart from the fact that when we allow our roots to go back into nature, or when we realise that that's where they've always been, that any sense of disconnectedness that we've had has to have been an illusion, and all we have to do is hold our breath for about 2 minutes to discover what our real relationship with all of this is, and so once we actually begin to experience this, not only do we find ourselves with renewed and not sort of subject to burnout in that kind of a way that when we're isolated, when we're insulated from nature, then it's really easy for us to burn out of the use of our energy. But also something happens which was described by Arne Nass in a paper that he wrote last year. Arne Nass was the emeritus professor of philosophy at Oslo University who first coined the term deep ecology. And what he said was that when we make this kind of warm and spiritual connection with nature, then immeasurable new sources of joy are open to us. And I think this is very important because we're the kind of people that have to look extinction square in the eye, and we have to look at things that most people want to deny and most people want to look away from or hide away from in some way or other. And it's important that we not be crushed by this, and so we really need to be sustained and supported, and we also need to be able to look at these things and remain kind of joyous, because if we don't, then other people aren't possibly going to be attracted to realising that all of us have to look at this. And so the sort of the joy that comes from nature also can really replace a lot of the things that otherwise we would have to sacrifice in our lifestyle, because our lifestyle can't be sustained. The kind of consumption that's going on in the Western world can't be sustained. But if we have to make sacrifices out of a sense of duty or responsibility, then it's not going to work, because most of us aren't capable of doing it. But if we are able to connect with a deep joy at being alive and a deep love of the natural world, then this can replace the kind of false gods of materialism. Anyway, this is I'd like to end up with a song which is a love song to the universe. Remember that you're standing on a planet that's evolving, revolving at 900 miles an hour. It's orbiting at 19 miles per second, so it's reckoned a sun that is the source of all our power. The sun and you and me and all the stars that you can see are moving at 1,000,000 miles a day in an outer spiral on at 40,000 miles an hour in a galaxy they call the Milky Way. The Milky Way. Our galaxy contains 100 billion stars. It's 100,000 light years side to side. It bulges in the middle, 16,000 light years thick, but out by us it's just 3,000 light years wide. We're 30,000 light years from galactic central points. We go round every 200 million years. And this galaxy is only one of millions and billions in this amazing and expanding universe. Expanding universe. The universe itself keeps on expanding and expanding in all of the directions it can whiz. As fast as it can go, at the speed of light, 12 million miles a minute, and that's the fastest speed there is. So remember, when you're feeling very small and insecure, how amazingly unlikely is your birth. And sink your roots deep into the galaxy dance of life, planet Earth. And sink your roots deep into reality, dance your life for planet Earth. Song by Greg Keeler. He's one of the Great Earth First musicians. He's professor of English at Missoula, I think. Well, long ago my granddad had a farm in Oklahoma till the wind blew away the soil. Then the dozers came in, flattened out the place place. A banker bought it and discovered oil. When Granddad returned and tried to buy the place back and get to farming like he had all along, that banker wouldn't sell and said that he could go to hell, and started into singing this song. I gotta make bucks, get rich, be better, and everybody get fat and have a heart attack. Make bucks, get rich, be better, and everybody get fat and have a heart attack. Well, that was long ago, when lots of folks say that a depression couldn't happen today. But I just say, come off and take a look at the windfall profits that them bankers is making us pay. There's just a bunch of mobsters sitting eating steak and lobsters while the old folks freeze in their beds every night. And if we hit them with court rulings, they'll accuse us all of fooling with their inalienable right to make bucks, get rich, be better, and everybody get fat and have a heart attack. Make bucks, get rich, be better, and everybody get fat and have a heart attack. A couple years ago down the South China Sea, I was working for the Merchant Marine, still trying to make a buck, and at the end of my luck, when I came up on this scene, out floating across the bow there was a dirty old scow, just loaded down with human lives. They hadn't eaten for days, and they yelled out half crazed that the skipper just passed them by. And then he explained that it would just be a pain to try and take that boat in tow. If we took them home and tried to feed them, they'd impose upon our freedom, i.e. they cost a lot of dough. Them tired and hungry masses is just a bunch of asses trying to cash in on Uncle Sam. And when he was through, I looked around and half the crew had assembled in a military band, and they sang, we gotta make bucks, get rich, be better, and everybody get fat and have a heart attack. Make bucks, get rich, be better, and everybody get fat and have a heart attack.
1989. We were saying it back then. That is what we were talking about 29 years ago. And we were right. We were right. And we've lost a lot. And so much more is going to be lost. So, before I play Paul Watson, I thought what I'd do is I have a new short little video I've found that's got some statistics, some environmental statistics, terracide figures. So let's see what it looks like now. Okay. So I do think with our activism, the first thing we have to do is start with reality. What is the reality? Yes, we're in this living satellite floating around the universe, and it's got limits. And it's a dynamic life, multiform. And there are systems that we are messing with that can mess up the whole ship. And so that means we have to deal with the magnitude and the urgency of the situations around us, first and foremost when we assess our priorities. And then when we choose our strategies and tactics, it has to be to either make sure we always stay within the limits of those systems, or if we are out of whack, that we pull them back into balance as fast as possible before the whole system chaotically breaks down. So we did not do what we had to do. I mean, all of us as a people, obviously there were, I was working with all these incredible people, all of these incredible people. We were doing everything we could do. Everything we could do. So today I found this Conservation International short talk by Harrison Ford, who is vice president for their group, talking about the climate crisis. And maybe he's a little shy, maybe, or maybe he's just really fucking freaked out. This is not Harrison Ford, the actor playing a character, Luke Skywalker. This is not Luke Skywalker. So, this is, I think he's tuning into it. He's tuning into it. And this is his message right now, this week in 2018. And then I'll wrap up this segment with a couple of songs.
Well, our next speaker is known in nearly every galaxy as an acting legend, but he will be the first to tell you that planet Earth is the only home we have. I'm very glad to introduce him as a tireless champion for conservation and an outspoken climate change activist. Please welcome the Executive Vice Chair of Conservation International and recent recipient of its prestigious Founders Award, Harrison Ford.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. You're here, I'm here, because we care. Not just for today, but we care passionately for the future. We know that we only have the possibility of avoiding a looming climate catastrophe if people like us refuse to give up. Conservation International has been working for 30 years to protect nature for people. I've been on their board for over 20 years. We've done some good work in that time, working with others, many of whom are in this room today. We've accomplished a lot, but all of that is at risk if we don't change the path that we're on today. The future of humanity is at stake. While you work to meet the challenge of climate change, I beg of you, don't forget nature. Because today, the destruction of nature accounts for more global emissions than all the cars and trucks in the world. We can put solar panels on every house. We can turn every car into an electric vehicle. But as long as Sumatra burns, we will have failed. So long as the Amazons, great forests, are slashed and burned, so long as the protected lands of tribal people, indigenous people, are allowed to be encroached upon, so long as wetlands and bog peats are destroyed, our climate goals will remain out of reach, and we will be shit out of time. If we don't stop the destruction of our natural world, nothing else will matter. Why? Because protecting and restoring forests, mangroves, wetlands, these huge, dense carbon sinks, represent at least 30% of what needs to be done to avoid catastrophic warming. It is, at this time, the only feasible solution for absorbing carbon on a global scale. Simply put, if we don't protect nature, we can't protect ourselves. This is what we need to do. We need to include nature in every corporate, state, and national climate goal. Put in place the plans, the timetables to meet those goals. Invest in mangroves and tropical forests in the same way invest in renewable energy. Work to end the destruction of these ecosystems. Commit to the effort in the next decade to secure them for the future. Pursue research in reforestation like we pursue research in carbon capture and storage. Set a goal to cut costs and increase scale dramatically. Empower indigenous communities to use their knowledge, their history, their imaginations, our science to save their heritage and their lands. Respect and ensure their rights. Educate and elect leaders who believe in science and understand the importance of protecting nature. Stop, for God's sake, the denigration of science. Stop giving power to people who don't believe in science, or worse than that, pretend they don't believe in science for their own self-interest. They know who they are. We know who they are. We are all, rich or poor, powerful or powerless. We will all suffer the effects of climate change and ecosystem destruction, and we are facing what is quickly becoming the greatest moral crisis of our time, that those least responsible will bear the greatest costs. So never forget who you're fighting for. It's the fisherman in Colombia, the fisherman in Somalia, who wonders where their next catch is coming from and wonders why the government can't protect them from a factory fishing from across the world. It's the mother in the Philippines who's worried that the next big storm is going to rip her infant out of her arms. It's the people right here in California, people on the East Coast, people in California who are fleeing from unprecedented fires. People on the East Coast are facing the worst storms in recorded history. It's our own country, our own community, our own families. This is the core truth. If we are to survive on this planet, the only home any of us will ever know, for our climate, for our security, for our future, we need nature. Now, more than ever. Because nature doesn't need people. People need nature. So let's turn off our phones, let's roll up our sleeves, and let's kick this monster's ass.
Pretty cool. But he did look pretty freaked out, don't you think? So, you know, I think we're getting on the same page. Conservation International is a conservative capitalist organization. And this was before today's hurricane. Hurricane Michael came ashore and became the third most powerful hurricane in recorded history going back into the late 1800s for the United States. And what is it, the fourth fastest wind speed when it hit landfall, 155 miles per hour. So I'm going to talk more about that later. I'm going to wrap up part one of this two-part show. The next part will have Captain Paul Watson and some music and poetry, and I'm going to wrap up with a couple of things here from Welcome to the Rendezvous. Two guys that I hosted at that event center I worked at, Shared Visions, Dakota Sid Clifford and Walking Jim Stoltz, and a guy named Lone Wolf Circles, or Jesse Harden. We're touring, doing a road show just like John Seed does, on an Earth First road show to get people involved in the movement and discussion of destruction of different forests around the world. And Jim and Sid both come from much more of a folk country background, although, you know, Sid's total rock and roller, and they were both dear friends of mine. Jim died a few years ago, but these are two of my favorite videos that I captured. This is 1988 with Sid and 1990 in Montana at the Montana Rendezvous with Walking Jim. And not sure if Dennis Fritzinger is stuck in there, but Sid was good friends with Utah Phillips, and he used to remind us, and I'll leave you with this: the planet isn't dying, the planet is being killed, and the people doing it have names and addresses, and so do their headquarters. So, Dakota Sid Clifford and Walking Jim Stoltz. I hope you really enjoy these. And then come on back to the next video. I'll be doing that in just a few minutes.
I'd really appreciate some water to drink, because I don't particularly care where it comes from.
There's a canteen behind you.
For reasons I'd rather not explain, I'm thirsty. Wonderful, thank you.
Got it?
Keep that near. Should have brought one of my own, you know, but I was nervous about bringing a canteen. Well, you know, at the campfire the other night, lots of people were singing along with my songs, which I consider the greatest form of flattery there is. So if you have one of my songs that you'd particularly like to hear, you're welcome to holler it out. I don't play no Willie Nelson songs.
All right.
Pardon me?
Good. Small brain.
Small brain. Yeah. Well, you know, small brains think alike, you know, isn't it a coincidence? I was just thinking of doing that song. When I sit in contemplation of the human situation, I often get a certain sense of pride. Our achievements are many and mighty. The evidence cannot be denied. But my reverie is shaken and my thoughts are always taken by that tragedy that happened long ago. When there moved through the land beings awesome and grand, the fabulous dinosaur. Well, they was creatures in a manner quite reptilian, in their unique and stylish ways. Their numbers could be reckoned in a million, but there are 0 of these heroes in the world today. They had music, art, and fashion. There was dinosauric passion, and I think they'd be enraged and mortified when they're mentioned today. It is only to say their brains were small and they died. Flintstones, meet the Flintstones. They're a page right out of history. Well, perhaps some asteroid that Mother Earth could not avoid became the agent of their premature demise. I've heard that these things can happen, but who are we to criticize when we'll spend most any price to have the ultimate device that ensures a perfect global suicide? I would venture instead that the humanoid head is where the tinier brain resides. And when we're gone, our works will start to crumble until nothing can be found. In 10 million years, some other guy will stumble on our fossil, and some asshole will begin to expound some scientific study to his cockroach science buddy. How the evidence could never be denied. They were big, dumb, and slow. They couldn't go with the flow. Their brains were small and they died. Thank you.
Well, what do you follow a song like that with? No. Here's one you can help me out on. I'm an earth firster and it ain't no jive. I was walking in the woods before I was 5. I'm a man of the mountains and I like it wild, but the noisy machine just kinda riled this child. Just the other day, I was up in the hills, singing to the coyote and the whippoorwill. Right off in the distance, I hear a roar. My heart starts screaming, what the hell this for? 'Cause all the critters are running, in panic they flee. The bat of the hell coming through the trees. Me, oh my, what could it be? It was a big fat man on an ATV. I've been around and seen some sights, but the one coming at me filled my heart with fright. Chartreuse trousers and pink golf shoes, and revving his engine like the bikers do. Others are running, in panic they flee. The bat of the hell coming through the trees. Me, oh my, what could it be? It was a big fat man on an ATV. He didn't even see me, raced on by. Wait, no, that's not how it goes. I stood by a tree as he raced on by with his frozen grin and his glassy eye. He didn't even see me, and of that I'm sure, 'cause I was flipping him off and with a few choice words. The critters were running, In panic they flee, the bat out of hell coming through the trees. Me, oh my, what could it be? It was a big fat man on an ATV. From the meadow to the river, and then on back, around and around he laid his track. Death and destruction, and to me it's plain, you drive an ATV, you're sitting on your brain. All the critters are running, and panic they flee, the bat out of hell coming through the trees. Me, oh my, what could it be? It was a big fat man on an ATV. Me, oh my, what could it be? It was a big fat man on an ATV. It was a big fat man on an ATV. Thank you very much. I'm going back to Idaho, back where the St. River flows. I'm going back to that high country snow. I'm going back to Idaho.
Oh, do we get do
Black and white viewfinder. That's so little down there, Greg.